The second installment, Final Fantasy II, is an odd one. It has massive changes both in story and gameplay, and those were received poorly. Before starting making videos on Final Fantasy, I looked at some ranking lists, and on most Final Fantasy II was the worst one. I don't think it is that bad, and to make my point I will go through the whole story. I like to present stories in this form of video synopsis for two reasons. First, all sorts of people can watch this. Some may have played Final Fantasy II recently, and for others it may be more than 15 years ago. Getting reminded about certain story beats is helpful, especially, and this is where I come to my second point, when I want to analyze the story. I cannot say story X is bad or good without having presented the object in question. So is Final Fantasy II the worst part in the series? Let's find out. Final Fantasy II starts with an intro. The world was in peace until the kingdom of Palamechia decides to summon demons for world conquest. Cities razed and fields burning, the kingdom of Fynn opposes the emperor, but has to flee their capital. Your party are 4 orphaned kids, and while you flee, you get attacked by knights. Firion, the main character, wakes up in Altair, the headquarters of the rebellion. The intro calls the Kingdom of Fynn the Rebels, which is not technically correct. Sorry to be a pedantic Schweinehund, but rebels are opposing an established government. A kingdom fighting against aggressors is simply war. I was a bit confused by this intro, because it suggested that Palamechia already controlled the world. Still, this start is pretty good. You can change your characters' names, but you shouldn't. In this game, your characters have personality and a clear place in the story. Firion is the main character and he is accompanied by Guy, a calm personality that speaks rarely but is a peaceful giant of a man. Maria is the third party member. Her brother Leon is missing and you saw and played him in the intro. The princess Hilda welcomes you. She and her advisor Minwu saved you. You want to join the rebellion, but Hilda declines, because you are too young and inexperienced. The group of 3 travels out of town to search for Leon. They sneak into Fynn and while evading the guards they find Prince Scott in a back room of a tavern. He is mortally wounded and gives the group his ring before dying. Scott and his brother Gordon are allies of Fynn and romantically interested in Princess Hilda. Gordon is with Princess Hilda and organizes the rebellion. The group returns and gives the ring to Hilda, along with his dying words. The kingdom was betrayed by Count Borken. Hilda is now sure of the group's ability and allows them to join. She gives them a mission. In the city of Salamand there is Mithril. Pardon, it is Mithril in Final Fantasy. The rebels need it for better equipment. Fynn already sent someone, but they did not hear from him. Minwu, Hilda's advisor, will accompany us. When I say a character's name, I will usually repeat their position in the story. The story drops a lot of names and I think this will help viewers not getting confused. I for myself often remember characters more by their position than by their name. For example, in Breath of the Wild, I know who the king is and how he looks, yet I know that he is the king and not his name. In Salamand, we meet Joseph, who refuses to give us information. His daughter, Nelly, was abducted. We have to save her before he is willing to speak. They took Nelly hostage in the same cave the Mithril is in. We go save her and a thief named Paul, and take the Mithril to Hilda. Now the party travels to Bavsk. The town was enslaved to build a dreadnought, the second airship ever existed. An enemy called the Dark Knight is in the area, and just before the party reaches the airship, the Dark Knight launches it and damages multiple towns of the Resistance. Minwu then leaves. While Princess Hilda took command, her father is for now still breathing. He was injured by Palamechia, and Minwu, who is a strong mage, cares for him. Hilda then instructs us to meet Sid. He is the builder and owner of the first airship. He tells us that we need Sunfire to destroy the core of the dreadnought. For Sunfire we need 2 items. The Goddess's Bell, so we can enter Cashuan Keep, where we find the Sunfire, and Eagle's Torch, which will carry its flame. The Goddess's Bell is near Salamand, where Joseph is. He is reunited with his daughter Nelly and thankful for the party. and will accompany us. In the cave they get attacked by Borkin, the trader Count, and before dying he sends a large boulder Indiana Jones style against the players. Joseph then sacrifices himself to save the party. We depart to Cashuan Castle, where we meet Gordon, Prince of Cashuan and Roman's partner for Hilda. He helps us retrieve Eagle's torch, and with that we can get the Sunfire. Sid's airship gets captured and the party travels through a cave where they save Hilda and Sid. As Sid told us, we throw the Sunfire into the Dreadnought's engine to destroy it. We escape barely the following explosion. Returning to Altair, we find the king, Hilda's father. Before he passes, he makes a final plan. The rebels attack the castle, while Minwu, the advisor of Hilda, finds the ultimate magic tome, the Ultima Tome. Firion and his party will head to the Dragoons, who are knights riding wyverns. The keep of the Dragoons is across the sea and we accept passage by a captain named Layla, who is in fact a pirate and wants to rob the party. After killing most of her crew, leaving others with disabilities and pain for the rest of their lives, Layla joins the group and we can use her ship. The place is called Diced and we find out that the Dragoons have been wiped out and only a single wyvern remains. The wyvern is dying and it wants us to take the last wyvern egg to a healing spring in a cave, which will accelerate its growth. In Altair we learn that Hilda has been replaced by a shape-shifting monster, and the real Hilda is held in the Colosseum, as a prize for winning against a strong monster. We participate and fight against Behemoth, and defeat it. The Emperor then throws us into the dungeon, but we are saved by Paul, who we in return saved in the mines, along with Nellie, Joseph's daughter. We find Hilda and then escape. Near Fynn we find the rebels and join them in the assault. We free the city of Fynn, but Minwu is missing. He should have obtained the Ultima Tome, but he has not returned yet, so Hilda sends out us to look for Minwu. This may be the most convoluted part in the game, because we have to find two additional items, the Black Mask and the White Mask, on an island which is nowhere near our destination. Then we use the White Mask on a statue in another city, which freezes a copy of Firion, and then we use the Black Mask on the copy to kill it. I had to use a guide for that, and if anyone knows how a reasonable person should be able to know how to do that, please let me know in the comments. We obtain the Crystal Rod, and then get swallowed by a giant sea monster, the Leviathan. That thing swallowed other people. All of them got the Crystal Rod. In fact, there are so many people in the Leviathan that they have rooms, beds and practically a city. I meanwhile wonder why we had to go through the whole White Mask, Black Mask shenanigans. The Crystal Rod is not a rare item, it seems more like a common item, depending on how many people are here. In the Leviathan we meet the last of the Dragoons, Rickard Highwind. He helps us to defeat a monster that guards an intact ship inside Leviathan. We then travel out of the Leviathan, somehow, and get to the tower. On the top floor we find Minwu. At this point he is similar to another party member, helping us out at times, being friendly when we did not know where to go, and always reaching out a helping hand. The Ultima Tome is behind a seal, and to break it, Minwu has to use an extremely powerful spell that will kill him. The party is sad because so many people died in front of them, and now also Minwu, not just a party member, but almost family. He sacrifices himself so we can obtain the Ultima Tome. Which is shit, I never really used that spell. And now we go back to Hilda and find out that a giant cyclone is near the city. The Emperor summoned it to destroy the world. We use a pendant on a giant mirror which then summons a wyvern, somehow, which we then ride into the cyclone. In the cyclone is the Emperor and we defeat him. We return victorious and have a party in Fynn, but a knight enters and tells us that Leon crowned himself Emperor. Leon is the Black Knight, and it is unclear if Maria's brother joined the Emperor on his own or if he was brainwashed. The ending indicates it was the former. We fight Leon, and upon his defeat the Emperor now appears. He came back from hell to kill everyone. We gather at Hilda's, who then orders us to go down the Jade Passage, a place that connects the world of the dead with the world of the living. Before we do that, we enter Paul's house and find Sid. He was mortally wounded and gives us the airship before his death. The next part is straightforward. Leon joined us and we go through literally hell and defeat the Emperor. In the castle we get acknowledged for our achievements and it is hinted that Maria has feelings for Firion. Leon wants to stay alone because he cannot come to terms with the mass murders he did and leaves the party, promising to meet again when he comes to terms with this. So that was the story. While you can take this in, let's talk about the gameplay. Final Fantasy II plays similar to Final Fantasy I. Each turn you can choose between attacking, magic, items or fleeing. You can also decide to attack your own teammates or to make magic attack every enemy instead of one, for more targets at the cost of damage. What really is different is the Elder Scrolls style progression system. You have proficiency, which indicates how good you are with certain weapons. More proficiency means more hits, which results in more damage. If you attack an enemy with a sword, your sword proficiency will increase. If you cast a spell, your maximum MP will increase along with the level of the spell. Taking damage increases your life, and stats like strength or magic increases by using the corresponding skill. Because of this system, there are no classes, instead you define your character's abilities by what you use. There are benefits and detriments to this system. What is a big plus is the ability to change a character. In Final Fantasy I, if you pick the classes of your characters, that was it. You are stuck with them for the rest of the game. In Final Fantasy II you can have a magic user, pick up a sword and a shield and attack monsters until that mage has stats like a warrior and is still able to use magic, which incorporates dual classing into the system. The shortcomings of the system lies within the limitations. Besides one exception, there are no benefits in being proficient in many weapons. It will be always more effective to specialize into one weapon or magic. Each spell also levels up with use, so it makes more sense to use the same magic spell instead of different ones. This effectively negates the benefits. You can level up anything by design, but you are still incentivized to stick to your self-defined class for more effective combat. What I think the system needed are more advantages of using different weapons or magic. For example, you could make your magic stat level up faster with low-level spells, which in return would mean you could level up the stat by often changing used spells. You could also have enemies that are stronger against higher level magic or weapon proficiency, so you can strategically use low-level spells or weapons for massive damage. These are just examples, and there are probably better systems to complement an open-class progression system a la Morrowind or Skyrim. From what I read online, the system was broken at the time of release. The original Final Fantasy II had massive errors, one of which was that you level up effectively only if you attack yourself. The Pixel remaster fixed this. Final Fantasy II's progression system is in no way perfect. It is still too simple, but compared to Final Fantasy I, where there was no decision making involved, Final Fantasy II is a massive improvement. And so is the story. From the get-go we make characters, and those are capital C characters. They have their own history, relationships and a place in the world. Let's take our group. Guy is a calm, friendly giant who can speak to animals. Firion is a typical hero character who always wants to save people and do good. Maria searches for her brother, develops feelings for Firion and cries when another ally dies. In Final Fantasy I, the party you make are mannequins in comparison. In Final Fantasy I, each character you meet is a one-time throwaway character, which does not go beyond his description. The King of Place X is just the king. In Final Fantasy II, Hilda has two princes that want to date her. She wants to free her kingdom from the unlawful occupation, she has allies and plans, is sad when her father dies and gets abducted. Characters appear more often in the story, and are thus more part of the world. You meet Paul in the mines and later he saves you. You help Joseph saving his daughter and he sacrifices himself for the group in a later quest. Characters have a place in the world. They don't stop mattering or disappear as soon as they are no longer relevant to the story. They have their own paths and agendas. This is what the story does best. But there are some flaws and that should not be overlooked. The Emperor is the antagonist of the story, and this makes him one of the most important characters of the game. Yet he's completely underdeveloped and more akin to a cartoon villain that is evil for the sake of being evil. His plot points don't make sense. He wants to conquer the world but uses methods that will destroy it. This is a problem many villains have in stories. If they succeed, they will be king over rubble. And that is so obvious in many of these stories that it is outright an oversight in character development. Another thing that bothered me was the enslavement of Bavsk. The town was enslaved to build the most advanced airship. Ordinary people, villagers, farmers. That is like enslaving a village to build a CERN supercomputer. The biggest problem I have with the story is the Ultima Tome. I made a joke that the tome is trash and probably many will disagree. It is one of the most powerful spells and the exception to the rule that you need to specialize in character progression. Ultima's power depends on every level of proficiency and magic spell, so the more you have, the stronger it is. This requires too much investment in my opinion to make a single spell powerful, and yet at the end of the day it is just a slightly more powerful spell, which Minwu gave his life for. It was so tremendously important for the plot that we get the strongest magic tome to defeat Palamechia, and after Minwu is dead, no one even mentions it. The princess does not even ask where it is. It feels like everyone forgot. This makes the tragic death of Minwu hilariously janky. They make him sacrifice himself and then they pretend the tome does not exist and it isn't even important anymore. It is never even used within the story or to save anything. This is a shame because Final Fantasy II does kill sympathetic characters, which is something many stories are afraid to do. Seeing a character die that you like might sound awful, but it sets the stakes just right, because now every story beat has tension, no character is safe. The writers showed that they are ready to kill people and they might do it again. There is no guaranteed happy end for everyone and not every character lives to see the hard-fought peace. Characters can die, even the one you like, at any point. At the same time, this opens the anxiety of real consequences. The game also has misgivings about that. Leon at the end cannot come to terms with how many people he has killed. Shouldn't he be tried? Why is this upon the perpetrator to come to terms? He should be executed. I cannot shoot up a school and go to the police officer and say I need to come to terms with what I did and then walk away. That's not how taking responsibility works. Overall, the characters are not made poorly, and that is Final Fantasy II's strongest point. This now comes around to my introduction, where I raised the question if this game deserves its place at the least good Final Fantasy game, and my answer is a resounding no. It is most definitely not worse than Final Fantasy 1 or 3, which I'm playing right now. Final Fantasy 1 did not have a real story or options within the gameplay, and Final Fantasy 2 does so in both. Having one decision is so much more than having 0 decisions. If we would make a scale to how developed gameplay mechanics are, and make them range from 1 to 10, Final Fantasy 1 would receive all 1s in gameplay, in story, in decision making, and in many other areas, while Final Fantasy 2 would be at least a 3 in both gameplay and story and definitely characters. For the gameplay part, I'm not exactly sure about this, and that's what I want to talk about last. The original Final Fantasy II was bugged, which seems to make the gameplay a real drag. Then in later releases this was fixed. So which one do you use for ranking? Many sites I visited did make a ranking in 2015 or later, which means they had perfectly access to fixed versions. Yet still they treated the game as if no patch would exist. In my opinion, you should use the newest and most patched version of a game, if available. If you would review games like Skyrim, Resident Evil or Borderlands, you would not give it a bad score because the retail version 10 years ago was in a bad state. You would review based on what has been patched. I'm conflicted on that because Final Fantasy II was released at a time where no patches were readily available, and people who have played were stuck for a long time with an inferior version. Ranking it at the lowest Final Fantasy game was probably accurate at that time, but by no means it is now. I love Final Fantasy II's progression system and how inventive it is. To my knowledge, this is the earliest game that has an increase by use progression system. Because it is that groundbreaking, they abolished it in the next game. I was feeling sad for certain characters, for example when Maria cries that she wants not witness more deaths of her friends and allies, and this stuck with me even now as I'm writing this script. Final Fantasy II's place at the worst entry is undeserving, and maybe you can see my point. Farewell.